Yeah, welcome and welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. And here we are back again with part two of our discussion with former NFL scout for the New York Jets, Daniel Kelly. Let's get it. Here we are back for part two of our football geek out with Daniel Kelly, former NFL scout for the New York Jets. Daniel, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, thank you, Bruce. It's great to be here, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in today. It's good stuff. We're rolling. We're tracking on the same page.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, last time you were with us, we talked Justin Fields, kind of how both of us were impressed with his abilities, both physically and mentally with the game. So let's go ahead and finish up with him. What have you seen this season from Justin Fields? Obviously, it started out pretty rough, but what have you seen this season that is allowing him to make strides and develop further? Because honestly, I was kind of discouraged in terms of the coaching that he had. Obviously, we're moving towards we're already in a very offensive leaning league, and the Bears really surprised me in the offseason with the hiring of former Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus to be their head coach, and then grabbing I want to say former quarterbacks coach out of Green Bay to be the offensive coordinator. What are you seeing that the Bears are doing that's kind of allowing Justin Fields to develop and have some more success as the season progresses?
Well, Bruce, you hit right on it right there. When you talked about how they brought in Green Bay's quarterback coach who would work with Aaron Rodgers, and they brought him into Chicago. And I remember reading in the preseason how encouraging it was to me because, I followed this thing with Fields pretty closely.
Mm-hmm.
And, the comment was made by his name escapes me right now, but the new OC in Chicago, he had made a statement saying that, we're going to kind of like form this thing around Justin Fields, kind of what his strengths are. We're going to kind of build this thing. And they gave him all the snaps and reps of practice. I remember at training camp, and they really made a real commitment towards him, in camp, and really made that statement to him that you're the guy. We're going to build this thing around you. Don't listen to the noise. And really, it's kind of interesting because I wrote about Fields, for Jets SI leading into this next game, and as I was studying the game film and going back and watching it, the television announcer a few weeks back had mentioned that in preparation for their game, I think it was the Patriots defensive coordinator or something, or it said something that, what he noticed was that, whereas Fields used to run out of necessity, now they were building plays, running plays, and designing run plays. Yeah. So, what I'm talking about, around that. And that's really allowed for him to kind of be more himself. I mean, kudos to what they're doing in Chicago, for kind of trusting, what Fields can do and allowing him to kind of just be able to do it. And I think he's got a lot more flexibility. I think he feels more comfortable. I feel like they feel like, he feels like they trust him. He's communicating that to the locker room. It's kind of permeating. There's a lot of good things going on there in terms of communication. And I think all that combined is really kind of, blossoming in Justin Fields into what you and I both knew he could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So we already talked about Zach Wilson. We're not going to beat a dead horse there or go back down that road. What other players?
Why me? Why can't I play? No, I'm just kidding. I won't go there.
Right. What other players did you see that came out last year that you kind of had as maybe a can't miss guy or a bust guy, or maybe let's try it this way. What players came out last year that you had a high grade on that you missed on?
That's a great question. I think that Jamar Chase, he kind of sticks out to me, with Cincinnati. As far as like, to me, I felt like he had a little underachiever to him on game film at LSU because he dogged it in some routes. I mean,
Okay.
he was like, he took it kind of easy because you could see on game film on some routes, he was like really sprinting, going fast. And other routes, he seemed to kind of be taking a little bit easy. And I was like, oh, geez, what are we looking at here? And so that's the big one that kind of stands out to me. I was very hard on Micah Parsons. I was very hard on him coming out of Penn State because to me, he took half the plays off at Penn State. I mean, on game film, he dogged it. He would just quit. plays. He still does it in Dallas half the time. Nobody really realizes it because everybody's so enamored with the highlights.
Yeah.
But you go back and look at that 49ers Dallas game last year, it was embarrassing watching Micah Parsons on game film. I mean, he basically missed tackles, was taking bad angles, dogged it. He had a couple plays here and there. I mean, that's what the fans, everyone's watching the ball, right? Everyone's like, I watched Parsons that whole game, and yeah, he's still but obviously the talent's there. I put a first round grade on him, you know, too, before he came out of Penn State. But those are a couple guys that I've taken a lot of flack over. You know, and you know, so those other guys, you know, those are guys that stick out the most. But you know, that's, you know, those, you know, like my NFL mentor taught me, if you hit on 70% of the guys, you're a rock star. And I mean, it's you know, it's not an exact science, as Tony Rosano said. But I feel just as comfortable talking about my misses and my near misses as I do talking about my hits, because scouting is something where I'm always getting better, always evolving. I'm always learning new things. I mean, it's you know, there's guys have been doing this that are Hall of Fame guys that are missing on players. I mean, so it's always something to be learned, which is one of the things I love about it.
Nice. All right, so let's move forward to this year. Obviously, we know glamour position, most important position in sports, quarterback. So let's talk a little bit about the quarterback prospects this season. I'm hearing so much about Bryce Young. Obviously, you see him everywhere. Really talented guy, but also a really small guy. I actually, and I'm not saying he will be, but oddly enough, in the way he moves, the way he throws, his mechanics, everything, and then the number 9, I do see a resemblance to Drew Brees, unless maybe the number 9 is just like playing with my mind and saying, okay, that's Brees.
It happens. It happens. Right. He remembers his numbers. Yeah, absolutely. It happens.
Do you see any Drew Brees in Bryce Young and the way he plays and being a smaller guy who has some mobility but can make all the throws and is a great leader?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not Bryce Young. To me, I put a CFL grade on Bryce.
Wow.
This is going to be my crusade this year. You know, much like my Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance crusade in 2021. I will be going on a Bryce Young crusade this year. And again, it's not based on anything personal. It's just based on what I'm seeing on game film. I mean, it's really simple. I just write down what I see in film. To me, Bruce, he seems extremely jittery in the pocket. He seems very uncomfortable in the pocket with the pass rush and stuff. And the game film that I've looked at and documented, it's something where, and he also he's got a noodle arm. I don't think he has an NFL arm.
Okay.
And so it's something where I think he's uncomfortable in the pocket. I don't think he's got an NFL arm, and I think that he's really a byproduct of Alabama's system and talent that they built around him. He's somebody that's you know, he needs really. I mean, he excels most against zone coverage, and throwing the ball into larger throwing windows that are not going to exist in the NFL. When I go back and I looked at Mac Jones at Alabama a couple of years ago, was my QB2 behind Fields coming on. I look at Bryce Young. There's no comparison. I don't see how Bryce Young, I don't understand the hype behind this kid. And I'd be willing to sit down with any general manager or any NFL draft expert on national TV, split screen, and go at it, because, you know, unless I'm missing something, I mean, show me the game film. That's what I would say to the guys, is show me the game film you're watching, because to me, I'm just not seeing it on game film at all. I wrote him up for SI Jets. I've written him up a couple of places, and I'm not feeling it with Bryce Young.
Okay, and let me push back on that briefly.
Please.
With Bryce Young, we hear about how good he is, and you mentioned Alabama's system and the talent around him. This year, that Alabama team is not nearly as talented as it was last year in terms of his receiving weapons, but he still seems to be carrying them and doing everything he can to help them have success. Are you seeing that, or is that am I kind of just going into kind of what I'm hearing and what I'm being told by the announcers and the college football media?
Well, you know, I won't go as far as saying that, but you know, I mean, I've watched him. See, what I'm doing this year is I'm trying to even cut down on my mistakes a little bit more this year. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the 2021 game film, and that's where I did extensive work on Young coming into the season. And then starting about December here, I'm going to go back, circle back, and look at all the guys on the 2022 game film. They try to get more of a perspective, a 2-season perspective, because we see these guys guys all the time that just pop out of nowhere. Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett. We see these guys that, go from Pickett was rated number 67 by PFF during the summer, a summer ago, prior to the draft. And all of a sudden he jumps into the first round. I mean, who's this? These guys. So I'm trying to get a more well-rounded perspective on the guys. So I will look at Young more extensively, especially as 2022 game film. But as it stands right now, based on what I saw up to 2021 stuff, and I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it, and I'm just not.
Okay, so my QB1, based on what I've seen so far this year, is CJ Stroud, Ohio State. And again, a lot of weapons, ton of weapons, but he's getting NFL coaching. This is a guy, to your point, that looks to be extremely comfortable in the pocket, has moderate athleticism. He's not a Justin Fields athlete, but he can really sling it. He can, process what he's seeing and dissect the defense. Where are you on Bryce Young, and what do you think about him?
Well, we're back on the same page again.
Wow. People are going to think we set this up.
Yeah, they really are. Trust me, this earpiece is to hear you, not have information being fed to me, guys. So don't get on Bruce about this. But no, CJ Stroud, clear cut QB1 2023 NFL draft. No comparison. We hear some of these scouting terms thrown around so much for my draft website, firstroundmock.com. It's the first time in 40 years I've ever used the term generational talent. That's a term that's thrown away around by scouts like screen passes are in the NFL. This guy I call my human jugs machine. That thing that spits out the football, the receivers. To me, extremely mature in the pocket, extremely poised in the pocket, is doing things that a lot of veteran quarterbacks struggle to do. Looks off the safeties naturally, keeps the separation from the safeties, fires it downfield. And the thing I love most about CJ Stroud, and it's kind of ironic because basketball was his first love, right? Is that he's kind of got that tempo. Again, we go back to talking about what we spoke about before in the other episode about Trevor Lawrence. Is that quarterback is like the drummer of a band. And the thing I love about Stroud most is that he's got this consistent upbeat rhythm and tempo that just keeps coming at you play after play, just like that. And he keeps firing the ball and firing the ball and firing the ball. And it's the placement's good. Everything's good. To me, the NFL, when it's applicable, I try to put an NFL comp on some of these guys to try to get an idea that something scouts do. This guy reminds me of, so-and-so, whatever. It kind of fills in some of the blanks. To me, he's a modern day Warren Moon. I think he's going to be, he's that good. I mean, he's exciting.
I'm sorry to cut you. That's an amazing comp. And that's one I don't think since I started doing podcasting and really, football media, I don't think I've ever heard that comp made before. So to me, that is tremendously high level praise. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, love them. I mean, I don't love many of these guys, but the ones I do, I definitely that's right. Let everybody know about it.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So we've talked Fields, we've talked Stroud. I think there's something that I want to touch on with you here, and maybe it gets back to the group think that we mentioned earlier. What is it about Ohio State quarterbacks? Because some of these guys get punished for being Buckeye quarterbacks. I've heard it said, among my own friends, and obviously we haven't for the most part seen Ohio State quarterbacks have big success in the NFL. What is it about these guys? Is it just happen to be where they end up? Is it something? What is it? What's your perspective on that?
It's lazy scouting. What we touched on before, it's you got to scout the player, not the school. And I think you have a handful of guys in the past, whatever the guy's name, Art Schlickner, guys or whatever his name was. You got these guys that have come through and they, the school's not really known for producing superstar NFL talent at the quarterback position, but everybody's different. And, sometimes I think, people get caught up in that. And I mean, Fields is a classic example of this. I mean, Fields is coming into Chicago. He's playing really well right now. San Francisco and the New York Jets are kicking themselves because they didn't draft him, but there was some of that Ohio State talk with him too. But yeah, I just think it's just, sometimes, scouts get caught up in this. Well, nobody really good's come out from that school before at this position.
Hmm.
So, probably nobody good's going to be there again. And, it's just kind of it's just lazy scouting. Like you said, it's the best way of putting it.
Okay. So we'll talk real quick about Will Levis from Kentucky. I'm hearing everything about him being prototypical size and elite tools and physical tools and all that, as well as running an NFL system there. What are your thoughts on him? Have you seen a lot of him? Have you sat down to really start evaluating him as yet?
I have, and again, going back to the 2021 game film, I wrote him up for SI Jets. I've written up for first round mock. I'm not sold on Will Levis
Okay.
whatsoever. I put a fifth round grade on him. To me, he's I think he's a byproduct of their system in a lot of ways. From at least from what I saw last year, there a lot of run heavy stuff. I'm not liking the consistency I'm seeing from the ball placement downfield. I'm not liking. I think he holds the ball too long at times. I think there's some real warning signs there that I think are going to cause some real problems. It's interesting. It seems like the media and everybody kind of picks a quarterback or two every year to be kind of their media darlings, and
Hmm.
guys are going to push. I know I do find it interesting that I think his name is Rich Scangrello. They brought in Kentucky to be the OC from the 49ers, the quarterbacks coach,
There you
and
go. Okay.
with the Kyle Shanahan thing, and
Yep.
I kind of maybe I'm the first in the country to put this together, but it's just kind of scary to me when I think the 49ers stadium is called Levi Stadium, and his name is Levis. You can imagine the endorsement deal.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah,
didn't even think about that.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
be
no, that's the
crazy.
way my mind works. Sometimes I read too much into stuff, but
Right.
I just can't help but to think that there's going to be somebody, Shanahan. They don't really have any draft picks, but somebody from Shanahan's tree. I know the Jets have had scouts out to look at him from what I've seen on Twitter. Other teams have too from the Shanahan, kind of the tree and stuff. And I just, I kind of feel like he could end up in one of those places, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. I'm not buying it whatsoever. What I've seen off his 2021 game film so far. Again, I'll circle back to him and do a follow up on the 2022. But it's just these guys. It's like Bill Parcells used to say: if they don't bite when they're puppy dogs, they're generally not going to bite. And I'm just not seeing it with Will Levis at all.
Okay. So let's talk non-QBs. Who are some of your guys that you've labeled can't miss non-quarterback prospects and some of your overrated non-quarterback prospects?
Well, that's interesting. I go back to, guys I look at, some of my top guys, for this draft are Jalen Carter from Georgia, who I
Hmm.
absolutely love.
Okay.
To me, maybe it's the jersey number. I'm not sure what it is, but I see a lot of Alan Page in him.
Wow.
I mean, from the Minnesota
Yeah,
Vikings,
yeah,
I
yeah.
see. I wrote an article about him, about Jalen Carter. I call him a Hall of Fame talent. This guy
Jeez.
is. I think he's going to become the most dominant defensive tackle in the National Football League, and I don't think it's even close. I think this guy's going to rip it up pretty good. I really like him. Some other players I really like is Jackson Smith, the Jigma from
Okay.
Ohio State. I liked him last year.
Hmm.
Every time I see him, I like him. He's not a guy that's got the big wheels on the deep
Hmm.
speed, but oh my, what a great number two guy to bring in who just can dominate the short to intermediate level route levels of the field. Be that number two receiver. I mean, if the Minnesota Vikings or something got Jackson Smith, the Jigma, to go number two next to Justin Jefferson, wouldn't even be fair. Like that type of thing. I really like him. I really like Jordan Addison, the receiver out of USC,
Okay.
as another guy that just can take the top off of defense, deep threat, all three route levels. A really good player. Your guy from Notre Dame, tight end Michael Mayer. I
My
really like
guy.
him. I tell you what, Michael Mayer is. It's not even going to be fair watching him in the NFL. I mean, because he is a nasty route runner, and I mean that in a very complimentary
Yes.
way.
Yes.
He's like a wide receiver trapped inside a tight end's body.
Yeah. For a guy that size, he really runs
Oh,
routes well.
oh,
But
oh,
I love the
yeah.
way he blocks. That's kind of what he blocks. He's a tremendous blocker and has great catch radius. He's very dangerous in the red zone.
Very much so, very much so. Kind of like baby Gronk is the
That's what they call
affectionate
him. Yep.
nickname. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and but because you match up the guys like Mayer, like a tight end like that, against these linebackers and these safeties, and these guys that can't change direction that quickly. Like we talked about, Mayer can change direction really quickly for a man his size. With
Hmm.
his height, he's bigger than the guys who could be covering him. I don't think it's even going to be fair. I think he's going to become, if not the most dominant tight end in the NFL, one of the very elite tight ends in the National Football League.
Wow.
Yeah, I like him. I'm crazy about him. I love Josh Downs, the receiver from North Carolina.
Mm.
To me, he's the most. I mean, he's explosive. I mean, the guy is just all three route levels. Reminds me of this year's Garrett Wilson
Okay.
that from the Jets took and stuff. I
Yep.
really like him. Some other guys. I think Trenton Simpson is a name that we all need to get used to out of Clemson. Simpson is a guy who I feel is going to revolutionize the position at linebacker in a lot of ways because he can play. He can do a lot of different things. I mean, he's a guy that can play down in the box. He's a guy that can roll out to the slot and cover the slot receiver. He's a guy that can roll back kind of to that safety position. Kind of like we see a little bit with Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, but obviously much bigger
Okay.
than Petrie. And Petrie's had a big season for the Texans. This kind of guy is going to be a dream come true for an NFL defensive coordinator because he can get to the quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that's got the juice and the burst to be able to get to the passer as well with that size. I think it's going to be a dream come true, as I said, for a defensive coordinator because what you can do is there's so much emphasis placed on pre-snap reads. Well, with Simpson, you can move him around and you don't really know what he's going to do, and he can destroy a slot receiver. I mean, trying to release on him, he'll just put him
Hmm.
right on the ground. That's another guy I really like. As far as, I mean, I think it's a pretty tackle rich draft. I think there's a lot of good tackles, offensive tackles coming out this year. One of the guys I really like is Jalen Duncan from Maryland. Is a guy that's really caught my attention. The guy, I mean, it's all about the feet and the left tackle, and the guy is like a
Yeah.
dancing ballerina out there, left tackle. I mean, the guy can
Wow.
really move around. Anton Harrison, the guy from Oklahoma, the left tackle, reminds me of a young Trent Williams. As a guy that, yeah, oh yeah, he's definitely extremely impressive in game film.
That's a huge
His other
comp.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Darnell Washington, the huge tight end from Georgia, as I think
Hmm.
is another guy that's going to dominate at the tight end level. Jack Campbell, a linebacker from Iowa, is somebody I really am super high on. Is a guy that's like a modern day Chris Spielman, a guy that
Hmm.
can just slam it in the box, and he can also drop and cover, which is kind of the new hybrid type of middle linebacker that
Yep.
can do both. But those are some of the guys that really stand out to me. Other quarterbacks. I mean, I'm probably the biggest Spencer Rattler fan in the country.
Really?
I've been huge on Rattler. I've been a huge on Rattler for the last 2-3 years, and nobody in the country was happier than me seeing what he did against Tennessee.
Me
I
too.
was,
I was.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
So
was
this is
ecstatic.
funny. I was arguing with my buddy about that because he never believed in Spencer Rattler. So I'm telling him, hey, the guy's a 5-star out of Arizona. If he's a
Yep.
bum, Lincoln Riley doesn't want him. He's a pretty good player. And then, obviously, Caleb Williams takes the job, doesn't look back, and Spencer Rattler, he ends up going to transfer. What do you see about Spencer Rattler, excuse me, that makes him stand out in your evaluation?
To me, it's what I see in his eyes.
Hmm.
Matt Millen, said years ago that you can always read a quarterback by his eyes, and I tell you, this ice in his eyes. He's got this fire. He's got this competitive fire to him that's just the way he moves, his athleticism, the way he can throw the rock, the way he processes things. He makes very quick decisions at times. It's kind of like we talked about Fields.
Hmm.
And is a guy that just everything that we saw Spencer Rattler do against Tennessee. I've been writing articles for NFL Draft Diamonds for the last 2 years talking about how he's a franchise quarterback. I mean,
Wow.
everything. I mean, it was kind of like watching the whole thing just kind of come together against
Hmm.
Tennessee. I'm Let's put it this way: if somebody were to call me and offer me a general manager's job, based on everything I'm seeing, Spencer Rattler may be the name of the card in the first round. I mean, I love him that much. I think what the thing about Spencer Rattler is I think what kind of happened is his coach at Oklahoma stopped believing in him. I think there was some politics, some things going on there that we may or may never not ever know. And it
Mm,
just seemed like he needs someone to believe in him. And I think he's
mm.
starting to find that again in South Carolina. And trust you and me, if I had a chance to get that kind of talent, I mean, to me, I wrote an article for First Round Mock, and I compare him to Patrick Mahomes.
Wow. Yeah, I think you might be the only person in America that's making that comparison.
Well, hey,
Well,
I'm that's where my PO box is.
that's okay. Well, we'll see how that plays out. So we'll wrap it up with this. We've got some games this weekend. Obviously, you've got the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama. You've got the battle for the Shillelagh, Notre Dame and USC. You've got, of course, the game, Michigan and Ohio State. Why don't you tell us what games will you be watching, if not all of them, and who from those teams will you really be having your eyes on in terms of guys who can make impacts next season? For instance, last year in the game, Ohio State, Michigan, you saw Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo really, I mean, obviously we all knew that those guys were elite college players, but we saw those guys really on that huge stage wreck the game and cement themselves as to what they would end up becoming on the next level. Who are you looking at this weekend, and which of those games kind of has piqued your interest the most?
Well, that's interesting because you're way ahead of me on that stuff.
Okay.
Actually, I'll probably be getting around to that game film probably by about February.
Okay.
Because yeah, what happens is that every day I'm on a really kind of a tight schedule, and
Mm,
I'm just wrapping up the 2021 game film stuff right now, and so every day I basically do like probably one, if not two articles a day, and each article takes me between about 6 and 8 hours to write
wow.
when
Okay.
it comes to game film review and everything. So I'm putting a good probably 14 to 16 hours in a day
Wow.
to just watch the guys that I'm watching. So unfortunately, I won't probably have a chance to watch the games this weekend.
Mm,
They sound like a lot of good matchups, and it's really important too. I think for our listeners who are going to be watching those games live, is level of competition, Bruce, and to our listeners is so huge when it comes to
yes.
scouting, and so when you think a guy is really good, just try like kind of look at who he's going up against and what's being said about that player. And a lot of these big games like this are going to offer a real high level of competition, and that's what scouts want to see. That's where the teams will send a lot of these guys to scouts to see these players because you can kind of get a feel for that because that is part of the scouting equation that goes into how's he going to project into the NFL type of thing. So that those are key games you mentioned. There's just not enough hours in the day. That's the problem. It's like my
I
wife's already like she's like we're laying in bed at 10:30, 11 o'clock. She goes, you're still on Twitter. I'm like, I'm still trying to catch up with these notifications.
I hear you. And finally, a lot of times you hear, especially during the SEC championship game or the national championship game, if you got SEC teams there. For instance, like last year, obviously you had Bama and Georgia playing twice at the end of the year. This year you'll have Georgia and LSU for the SEC title, and oftentimes you'll hear this refrain from the announcers: "Wow, look at these guys! There's just NFL bodies everywhere." Do you kind of feel like you will have a similar thing in terms of NFL players being all over the field in that Ohio State Michigan matchup? Because I definitely feel that way, from the receiving core to the defensive lines to the offensive lines to the running backs to the quarterback. Obviously, a lot of talent there. Do you think that a statement like that is comparable for this game, which is pretty much the de facto Big Ten championship game?
Pretty much. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's going to be a lot of different, players coming to all those teams. They're going to be in the NFL some capacity or another. The cream always rises to the top, as they say. Those are two
Mm-hmm.
really, great programs, great teams, great rosters, that type of thing. Where those guys end up getting drafted specifically and what
Mm-hmm.
round and everything remains to be determined. But I do think that, those are very different well-coached programs and really a good situation. And I think you will see a lot of NFL players coming out of those type of games.
Outstanding. Well, listen, Daniel, I could do this with you all night, man. But
I could too. I'm just
I'm,
getting warmed up. I haven't even told you who my sleeper quarterback is. I got
you
all
know what?
sorts of
Before
good.
you get out of here, let's go ahead. Tell us, who's your sleeper quarterback, Daniel?
Malik Cunningham, Louisville.
Louisville. Okay,
Yeah. If you
I can
look at
see
the
that.
numbers, I mean, I like Malik a lot, and I think what we've seen out of Justin Fields, and I think what
Hmm.
we've seen out of Lamar Jackson, I think this is where the NFL is kind of heading.
I think so
Malik
too.
Cunningham, yeah, Malik Cunningham, he's the guy. He had better numbers than Lamar did even at Louisville in over a complete better completion percentage. Better quarterback rating than Lamar had at Louisville. And, I really think, I mean, I have a first round grade on Malik Cunningham. Obviously, he's been banged up a little bit recently, but that's a guy that I'm really looking at and extremely high on. And another guy that reminds me a lot of Randall Cunningham. As a matter of fact, I thought they were related at first when I first watched him. I was like,
Hmm.
it's like seeing like the play action, all the motions. Like I'm like, wow, it's like going back in the time machine.
Yeah, yeah. All right, good stuff. Well, listen, Daniel, thank you so much. Before you get out of here, tell the people where they can find you.
Absolutely. Anywhere on the internet, and
Right.
especially on Twitter. You can find me over Twitter and people making all sorts of comments about me. But specifically, my book website, Bruce, is whateveritakesbook.com. That kind of gives my story and backdrop. The fans that want to read about that, true story of a fan making the NFL. I write for Sports Illustrated New York Jets. You can find all my articles on there. And I just launched it this year, 3 months ago, my very own NFL draft website, firstroundmock.com, and fired up about that, bringing you the former NFL scout, bringing you the top 32, as I say, and just kind of putting together the elite talent in the country and projecting those guys for fans and bringing more accountability to this than anybody can offer in the country by including game film links and everything else. So it's not just saying some words. It's actually all the accountability built into it too.
Great stuff. Well, thanks so much, Daniel, for joining us. Really appreciate it. This has been awesome. Definitely love being able to talk to you and really geek out over some football. And I look forward to doing this again.
Absolutely. I love your name too, Bruce Hope. I think
Yes,
that's a
sir.
great name. My firstborn daughter, who I named after Champ Bailey, was Bailey Hope.
Very
As
nice.
soon as I saw your name, I was like, yeah, this definitely is good. So you got a great show, and thank you everybody for listening. And remember, there's always hope, no matter what you're going through.
There we go. Thanks so much. And I'm out. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.